On the Brian Kilmeade Show Newsmaker Hotline is a former International Space Station commander. And I want Commander Hadfield to know I was nerding out, geeking out with Eric and Pete and Allison before the show because I absolutely, as a child, fell in love with our space program. Commander Hadfield, welcome to the Brian Kilmeade Show. Welcome back.
Harry, it's good to be talking with you.
Good to be with you, Commander. And perfect, I think, opening starting point here, because people see now it's not just NASA. When we were children, NASA, and it was everything. Now we have other companies that are, able to do these things and work in collaboration, in coordination with NASA. Commander Hadfield, Commander Chris Hadfield, what is the current state of the aerospace industry in America?
Well, what's really changed, Harry, is the cost of launch has radically decreased. And that has opened it up to businesses like never before, where you used to have to be a trillionaire to fly in space. It had to be the United States or the Soviet Union. But as the cost of launch has dropped, as the vehicles have gotten safer, as the technology's gotten better, now private companies can launch into space. Even private citizens can launch into space. And it needs to be regulated. It needs to be, organized, just like all new technologies. But it's a whole new world. And the type of businesses that I'm working with now are really being able to take advantage of that.
And we're going to get to aerospace startup Atomic-6 in just a moment. But I want to put just a sort of sidebar question out there for you, Commander. And it is this. I know myself as a citizen, I couldn't stand it when we had to hitchhike with the Soviet Union, with Russia, in order to, to be able to go up to the space station or to get our folks back from the space station. How great is it now that that's no longer the case, and in a short order, it will no longer be the case?
Well, hitchhike's the wrong word. I served as an astronaut for 21 years, and in order to be qualified to fly multiple spaceships, and I was the pilot of a spaceship. So hitchhiking strikes me a little bit the wrong way.
I take it back, and thank you. I appreciate you correcting me on that. I take it back, but we were contracting with Russia, and we were paying Russia to fly our astronauts, correct? It wasn't like it was some collegial total thing where sometimes, hey, we'll take you and then you'll bring us back and we'll bring you. And like if it was like that, I wouldn't even have the feelings that I had as it was going on. But I will say I'm a persuadable person, and I won't use that phrase again after using it here. I will tell you that. So take it back with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was a combat fighter pilot during the Cold War, intercepting Soviet bombers in North American airspace. And yet, later we found ways to cooperate, where I helped build the Russian space station Mir and was the pilot of a Russian Soyuz, and I was NASA's director of operations in Russia. I had Russian crewmates. But the only way that's really going to work is if it's back and forth, and if different nations have their own national capabilities. And the United States needs the capability of launching their own satellites or their own people into space. And it's great that, when we retired the shuttle, we didn't have it. But now with SpaceX and hopefully eventually Boeing will get their vehicle working properly, and we'll have more than one way to get astronauts into space nationally as well as internationally.
You are listening to the great former International Space Station Commander Chris Hadfield on the Brian Kilmeade Show. I'll torture this point one last quick second to say I just watched about 2 nights ago The Martian, which is a movie I love with Matt Damon. I don't know how much of it is realistic, growing the potatoes with Martian soil and all this stuff. But what I did love was, and I think it speaks to what you just said a moment ago, the collegiality when fictional astronaut Mark Watney, a botanist, by the way, Commander, was stuck on Mars, and we didn't have another ship that would be able to get him, but the Chinese did. We didn't know it, but they told us we can get him. I love that level of collegiality. That's great. Seems to me the scientists and the people doing the job are terrific in terms of collaboration and collegiality. it's the politics that can mess things up, isn't it?
Well, to try and treat one nation as a single entity is always an oversimplification, and there's all different agendas within any different country. Of course, there's scientific, and there's exploration, and there's military, and there's security, and there's politics, and that's true everywhere. I think we need, especially in as hazardous and as complex an environment as space, we need as many chances to cooperate as we can get. As we're into this phase now of starting to settle the moon, not just visit there to prove that we can, but to actually start building places where people can stay for extended periods. It's going to be crazy if we don't find ways to cooperate with each other, help each other out when we're in trouble. And I love the movie The Martian. I know Andy Weir, who wrote it, and he captured the essence of being an astronaut. Look, the type of person that Matt Damon portrayed, Mark Watney on the surface, that like anybody in the astronaut office, just that sense of competence, reserve, scrappiness to solve problems, and mental toughness. And so I was really happy to see how well that was portrayed. And Andy Weir does a great job of that.
It is terrific, right down to Mark Watney, self-proclaimed space pirate. But I digress. We are visiting with former International Space Station Commander Chris Hadfield. Tell us about the aerospace startup Atomic-6.
Yeah, well, there's lots of great new technologies that we need in spaceflight. We need to be able to protect ourselves from orbital debris. There's about 1.2 million bits of debris orbiting the world, the size of the tip of your thumb or bigger. And we need to be able to detect them, clean them up. But in the meanwhile, we need armor and protection. Atomic-6 builds world-class space armor, light, tough. It's also like radio waves can transmit through it. So they've got some good early developmental contracts with the Space Force in developing the space armor. But what Atomic-6 is really doing that's cool right now is using their composites, their carbon fiber composites, to make solar arrays that are dead simple to deploy and retract. I've worked with a lot of space companies, and a lot of them fail on their first tries because the solar arrays, it's a really complicated mechanism, and they don't extend properly, and then you can never retract them. And what Atomic-6 has is using composites in a really clever, simple way, makes it lighter and really tough and reliable. And so they've got not just developmental contracts with the Space Force, but they've got commercial contracts with companies like Sidus to start providing kind of a new generation of solar arrays to space vehicles. And I really think we need as much developmental, successful space business to be startups all around the world, all across the country as we can. And so Atomic-6 there in Atlanta, they're a really good example of that.
So exciting. We are visiting with former International Space Station Commander Chris Hadfield on the Brian Kilmeade Show. You mentioned the space, I think you may have called it debris. I don't know exactly what you called it. But when we look at those photographs, Commander, and it looks like it's all over the place, what should we make of that? Like, is one day, I guess some of it maybe ultimately goes out of orbit and burns up or whatever, or pieces of it come down. But are we going to ever have to do like a spring cleanup? And you know what I'm saying? Those photographs that we view shows an amount of debris that looks disturbing.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I commanded the International Space Station, and the outside of it is peppered with little like buckshot holes of little bits of things. Some of them are just rock from the universe, because the Earth gets hit by about 40 tons a day of meteorites, just little ones, and they hit the space station, and it's got armor on it. But it also gets hit by human-made debris, and if we see a big piece coming, we'll fire the engines on the space station to get out of the way. It's not as bad a problem as sometimes it gets reported. Space is bigger than you think, and it's three-dimensional. But at the same time, like any pollution we've created, we got to stop making it worse. We have to not allow it to harm us right now. We got to have a plan to clean it up. We're working on all three of those things. But we've got like 40,000 tracked objects orbiting the world right now. 11,000 of them are active satellites, and we're slowly catching up with our own technology for regulation. And as a commander of a spaceship, it was one of my worries. It wasn't the biggest, but if you sit quiet on the spaceship and wait, you can hear the ricochet noise of bits of orbital debris bouncing off the armor. So it's a real problem, and just one more thing that astronauts and spaceship designers need to worry about.
Ricochet and no problem to that it didn't come through or anything. Could it ever be going at a velocity, and could it be enough where it could pierce the space station?
Yeah, everything up there is going at least 5 miles a second to stay in orbit. And if it's going in a different direction than you, then the 5 miles a second could be coming crossways or even head on. And so it's one of the three big emergencies we practice for, Harry. You could have a contaminated atmosphere, you could have fire. But the third one is you could have a hole punched in the wall and have a depressurization. Fortunately, the space station is big enough that a little hole, it'll take a while for the air to leak out. So you can respond as a crew, put on masks, evacuate to the ship that brought you up, and maybe, hopefully, slam hatches shut and isolate the part of the ship that has the hole. So we practice for that regularly. And touch wood, eventually something like that's going to happen. But space is big, the pieces of debris are small, and we just need to get our arms around not making the problem worse, not firing anti-satellite weapons that turn one bit of debris into thousands of bits of debris. We just need to have a responsible attitude towards it.
Former International Space Station Commander Chris Hadfield on the Brian Kilmeade Show. You talked about the moon, and I know there are people who say, oh my gosh, why did we even go to the moon in the first place? Why would we talk about going to the moon again? I'm not one of them, obviously. I see the big picture. Maybe we didn't even know in the 1960s that this could be a launch pad to Mars, or maybe we did. I don't know. You would know one way or the other. But you talked about the moon. We can colonize the moon, and this moon can be a launching pad to missions to Mars and elsewhere. Do you see, is that realistically where we're going?
Yeah, it's, we've been living on the International Space Station, which is like our first permanent step away from the world for almost 25 years now. The next, lily pad in the pond, only 3 days away, is the moon. Mars is 6 months away, and we need a place to test everything and to make sure that we've got our operations right and to build all the infrastructure and to, but also the moon has about 100 billion gallons of water frozen into its craters. And so the moon is an interesting resource of its own. It has no life. So there's no biosphere, there's nothing to disrupt there. And it has minerals that have value on Earth. Rare earth elements, helium-3, other minerals. We've barely, literally just scratched the surface to even know the mineral wealth of the moon. And with the decreased cost of launch, the moon becomes much more viable now. And so I think, Harry, what we're going to see is space station for another, 5 or 10 years, then commercial space stations. The moon as our next settlement and development and test bed, and sort of stepping stone to eventually Mars, which is a much more desirable place to be. It's a lot bigger, more gravity. It has a lot of water. It's by no means the Eden that Earth is, but as we start to explore, like we've been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, that's going to be the pattern. And the moon is a really necessary step along the way. And we got people going there next February, which is pretty exciting. Not just unmanned vehicles, but there's a NASA SpaceX rocket, combo. This one's called Artemis, and we're working with SpaceX for future landers. But The next one's going, Artemis, is already in Florida, and the crew's been training for a while. International crew. I'm Canadian. It's a mixture of Americans and Canadians. And they'll be going to the moon next February. So we're at that stage in history, transitioning from exploration to settlement, just like we have all over the surface of the world.
Is it surprising that we have not been back in 55 years or whatever it's been to the moon? Or it was just we did that, and there was just no budget or no appetite to go back anytime soon? Is it surprising that it's been this long?
No, it's pretty normal human behavior. When England sent their first probe to across the ocean to the Americas, right after Columbus in 1497, they found what eventually became Newfoundland in Canada. In fact, they called it New Found Land. And they claimed it in the name of the king at the time. And they knew it was there, this enormous resource. But they had, political problems at home and strife and domestic troubles. And they're like, yeah, we'll get to it eventually. It took 100 years before the British actually started in any sort of earnest taking advantage of what they'd already discovered. And so that's a normal enough pattern. You've always got problems at home and you have to fit it in. And also,
there's a reason to go back now too. Commander, we have to go. I don't want to go, but best wishes. I know that you are working with this Atomic-6 and advising. Wish you well, Commander, and really great to talk to you. Loved your contact.
Nice to talk to you, Harry, and it'll be great to see Atomic-6's new light-wing solar arrays deploy here in space next year.
Sir, yes, sir. Thank you, Commander. Be well.
See ya.
We'll be right
Bye-bye.
back. Do not go away. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show.